What's up guys, it's Z here, welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck of the Day. Today we are covering the second deck from Amazing Defenders. We did cover Mekanko, and now it's time to take a look at the deck that can function more as a pure deck. It doesn't really need anything else in order to play it, and that's what I like about some decks. I just love decks that can function on their own as archetypes, and we don't really get such decks anymore. We always splash decks with a lot of other generic stuff, and not just like cards like Hand Traps, but also other archetypes like Tier Elements. But today we're taking a look at Rescue Ace, a machine deck that on top of all of the machine decks that we've gotten throughout the whole of the years, like cards like the Infinite Tracks, all those other machine decks, the Machina support that we got, this deck is the only one that doesn't really need to be splashed with all those other stuff, because you know that when Infinite Track was played, it was played with Machinas, with Trains, and all that other stuff, but this deck, it's as pure as it gets. So I really enjoy this archetype. It's a deck that, even though it's not the most competitive, at least not yet, with more support, it could be a really good deck. Right now, it's a really fun casual deck with a lot of potential, and now I'm presenting to you the build that I've come up with. It's a deck that you can kinda have to play it in a straightforward day. There's not really much room for innovation, at least not yet, but maybe down the road there will be more. So, before we begin, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and now, let's get to the deck profile. So let's start with the heart and soul of the deck. We're playing 3 copies of Rescue Ace Hydrant. This is the card that you have to get access to as quickly as possible. If you don't see this card, you're basically not using your deck to the fullest potential. So, what this card does is that while you have another Rescue Ace on the field, your opponent cannot target this card with attacks or for effects. And also it has 2 more effects that you can use, each of them once per turn, and you can activate 1 quick play spell or trap card that was set by one of your Rescue Aces the turn it was set, and also during your main phase you can add a Rescue Ace monster from your deck to the grave. So this card is the bread and butter of the deck. You need this on the field pretty much at all times to be able to activate your cards immediately and also keep giving you search. And the fact that it has self-protection means that your opponent is not going to be able to deal with it unless they deal with the rest of your board. So it's a card that can stick to the field very easily, and the more turns you get to keep this on the field, the more advantage you're going to amass. We're playing 3 copies of Rescue Ace Air Hoister. This card is the one that when it's summoned, it searches a Rescue Ace spell card from your deck, so it's the one that you kind of have to play as the 3 of because it's much better than the one that searches the trap cards. This and Hydrant is the only 2 cards that you need to play as 3 of, because the entire deck is very, very searchable. You can use all your monsters very easily with Hydrant and also this card giving you the spell cards, and once you get to your big boss monsters, you basically set your entire back row lineup, so you always have access to it, and there's always a way to recycle them as well, so it's not like you really need to play too many copies of spells and traps to be able to search with your monsters. And also, this card has another effect that when your opponent activates a monster effect on the field as a quick effect, you can tribute this card from either your field or your hand to special summon a Rescue Ace from your hand. So this card gives you access to your bigger levels, and during your own turn it's a searcher, so it's a really good card. We're playing 2 copies of Rescue Ace Intruder. This is the card that searches your trap cards on summon, and also it has pretty much the same effect. You can target a Rescue Ace monster in your graveyard instead from your hand to special summon by tributing this card when your opponent activates a monster effect on the field. So yeah, these cards are the low-level monsters that on summon they give you a plus, and during your opponent's turn they basically give you your pieces that you need to be able to disrupt your opponent, get more pluses, and get your deck rolling. We're playing 2 copies of Rescue Ace Impulse. This is a card that during your main phase you can choose an effect monster your opponent controls that has the highest attack, and neither player can activate that monster's effects on the field. And while your opponent activates a monster effect, again as a quick effect, you can tribute this card to special summon a Rescue Ace monster from your deck this time. So this card has a stronger effect during your opponent's turn, but has a kind of weaker effect during your own turn. So it's not a card you really need to max out. It's a card that can basically act as an imperm when your opponent has a big monster on the field that can also be a disruption, and also giving you more free access to the rest of your monsters when your opponent does some. We're playing 2 copies of Rescue Ace Fire Engine. This is a card that summons itself when you normal or special summon another Rescue Ace monster, and also if a monster is special summoned to your opponent's field, you can special summon a level 4 or Rescue Ace monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard. So it's a card that can recycle your Hydrant if your opponent has dealt with it, or if you linked it away for a play, and also it's a card that brings itself on the field, so it's very, very easy to get access to, and all these monsters, they bring each other out, so it's very easy to complete a chain with these cards to be able to get access to every single one of your monsters for every single turn that you have one of them out on the field. We're playing 2 copies of Rescue Ace Fire Attacker. This is basically another card that you can summon when you have another monster normal special summon to your field, and if a card is added from your opponent's hand, except by drawing it, you can draw 2 cards and discard cards. So this deck kinda has draw power in this card. It's not the greatest draw power that a deck has ever seen, to be honest, but it's not bad. It's something extra that you can use, so why wouldn't you? And the last Rescue Ace monster is the 1 copy of Rescue Ace Turbulence. This is a card that is winning most of your games. It's the card that you're basically aiming to summon every single time. So this card you can summon by banishing 2 Rescue Ace cards from your graveyard, and then during your main phase you can set up to 4 Rescue Ace quick play or trap cards from your deck. And if another card you control leaves the field by an opponent's card effect, you can target a card on the field and destroy it. So this card gives you access to basically your entire back row. Even if you set traps or quick plays, because of Hydrant, you can activate them during the same turn. And also this card punishes your opponent for dealing with your own stuff if they don't directly deal with Turbulence. And because it's a 3k beater and you're going to have a lot of other monsters on the field, it's very easy to sometimes get baited to destroy something else that is going to bother you, and then this card is going to punish you for that. So it's the big boss monster of the deck, 3k attack, very easy to summon, very searchable, and gives you access to your entire back row line. Now for the hand traps, you basically know it's coming. We're playing Bestials, we're playing 3 copies of Magnamut to the best one, searching you during the end phase, 3 copies of Druid Swarm. When it's sent to the graveyard from the field, you also get to send another card to the graveyard, and 3 copies of Saronir, because these cards are so good that you're even playing the worst one, which is Saronir at 3, because the deck does have space. It's not like you have to run too many cards to make the deck function, and when you have space for free cards, basically the Bestials are your go-to in the particular format we have. These cards have replaced every other hand drop in the game right now. Hopefully this is going to change sometime soon, but until we get a ban list, we are not seeing this happen. Now let's move on to the spell lineup. We have 3 copies of Alert. Now the spells, they have weird names, but they're always treated as Rescue Ace cards, so you can always search them. And this is a quick play card, but again, you can activate this during the turn you set it with Turbulence if you have your Hydrant on the field. And this card says that you can add a Rescue Ace monster from your graveyard to your hand, but if you have Hydrant on the field, you can add it from your deck to your hand. So you can see the importance of Hydrant. If you don't have the card on the field, it's basically like playing Sky Strikers with and without 3 spells in the graveyard. That's the best thing I can describe, because you have good effects, but they get so much better if you have Hydrant on the field. So it's a card you really want to get access to as quickly as possible, and then your cards become way more absurd. We play 1 copy of Rescue. This is another card that always is treated as a Rescue Ace card, and this card you can target a Rescue Ace monster in your graveyard, or if you have a Hydrant on the field, you can target a monster in your opponent's graveyard and you special summon it to your field. So it basically becomes Monster Reborn if you have Hydrant on the field as a quick play, which can also be just an interruption, because on top of playing all the bestial monsters, having a searchable card that can do this means that you can disrupt your opponent's graveyard even further. And we're playing 1 copy of the field spell, which is Rescue Ace Headquarters. This card boosts all your Rescue Ace monsters by 500 attacking defense while your opponent has a monster on the field. It gives you an additional normal summon for Rescue Ace monsters, which is really good because you do have monsters that search spells, such as traps, and of course you always want to normal summon your Hydrant as well, so having an extra normal summon is really important. And this card is also basically a runic fountain for the deck. You can target 4 of your Rescue Ace cards that are banished or in your graveyard, you shuffle them into the deck, and you draw a card. So even if you activate Turbulence's effect and get access to your entire back row, after you use them, you can use this card to put them all back, and then do the same thing all over again, which is very easy to keep doing every single turn to keep getting more and more advantage. So yeah, you don't really need to play too many copies of your spells and traps just because of this card exists. We're playing 3 copies of Pure Erase map because we really need to see Hydrant. Again, if you don't see Hydrant, your plays are so much worse, so we need to play as many searches for it as possible, and it being a 0 attack defense level 1 monster means that we can search it with Pure Erase map, and it's definitely worth half our life points just because of what the deck does with or without it. We're playing 3 copies of Auto Prosperity. This again is another way to search for Hydrant. It's kind of expensive, I know, but if you don't have access to it, this deck can still function without it. It's just that it's so much safer with this card being able to make sure that you're going to see Hydrant or a card that searches Hydrant. We're playing 1 copy of Reinforcement of the Army. We do have some warriors in the deck. The deck is not full machines. The Hydrant is unfortunately a machine, so you cannot search it with Rhoda, but with the Reinforcement, you can search Air Hoister, you can search Intruder, so you do have really good search targets, being your level 4 monsters that when summoned they give you a plus, so it's a free card. We're playing 1 copy of 1 for 1, again, another card that searches for Hydrant, we need to see it, and 1 copy of Called by the Grave, because sometimes when you're doing your plays, if for example you activate a Pure Erase map or you activate a 1 for 1 and it gets asked and you don't have another access to Hydrant, it can be really tough, so we need to play something to make sure that is going to make resolve all of those cards. For the trap cards, we play 1 copy of Contain. This is another card that is always traded as a Rescue Ace card, so you can search it with Turbulence, and if you control a Rescue Ace monster, you can target an effect monster your opponent controls. That monster cannot attack, it cannot activate its effects, and also if you control Hydrant, it cannot be used as material for a fusion, synchro, exceed, or link. So again, it's another card that's just an imperm when it's on its own, but if you have Hydrant on the field, it basically becomes so much better, so your opponent will not be able to use that monster for pretty much anything. And we're playing 1 copy of Extinguish. This card, if you control a Rescue Ace monster, you can target an effect monster your opponent controls, destroy it, and if you control Hydrant, your opponent cannot activate the effects of the destroyed monsters with the same original name. So this basically negates any floating effect if you have Hydrant, and if your opponent plays multiple copies of the card, which is an important card, your opponent is not going to be able to activate it at all. The extra deck is very generic. The deck doesn't have anything specific for the extra deck, so we're just using their attributes and their levels, and mainly to link summon. So we're playing 1 copy of Wallow. On top of the Bestials, we do have a level 6 monster, that being your fire attackers, so you do have more ways to get level 6s on the field on top top of playing the 9 Bestial, so it's very easy to summon this card, and we all know how powerful this card is against the Shizu tier. We're playing 1 copy of Ptolemy M7. It's a card that when you're going second, you can use it to remove a card or get it back from your own graveyard to your hand. Maybe you need another monster in your hand, or you can even recycle Bestials with this card. That's how good it is. We're playing 1 copy of Utopia Beyond. This is when you go for a Zeus play and your opponent has a huge board that you know your opponent is not going to be able to interact with an attack and then on top of a Zeus. So this card on summon, it makes all of your opponent's monster attack points 0. It doesn't require any Xyz material for that, so when you run over something, you can then overlay the 1 copy of Gaia Dragon the Thunder Charger on top of your Utopia Beyond, and then after your Gaia Dragon, you can summon the 1 copy of Zeus Sky Thunder on top of it, and boom, you have a 4 material Zeus right there. So it's a really good engine to play when you're playing level 6s, and because of the Bestials, basically everyone is playing level 6s right now, so you might as well run. For the Link monsters, we play 1 copy of Link Uribo. This card is here to link away for Hydrant when you want to go some co-linked plays with your Nightmares. It's something that you're always going to do only if you have access to Hydrant again with maybe an extra normal summon or one of the revival cards, but you really don't want to link away your Hydrant unless you can get it back onto the field, because that's how important the card is. We're playing 1 copy of Gloomy the Dark Charmer. Because of the Bestials, we do play Dark Monsters, so this card is really powerful. 1 copy of Hida. The entire archetype is Fire Monsters, so when your opponent has a good Fire Monster in the graveyard, we can steal it, go for Link Climbing. 1 copy of Masquerena. The deck can spam really quickly. A lot of monsters get access to themselves when you summon another monster. You do have extra normal summons, you do have revival spells, so it's very easy to get a lot of monsters on the field to be able to use Masquerena during your opponent's turn. We're playing, of course, the Nightmares. We play 1 copy of Cerberus. The deck kinda lacks a little bit of removal, but the extra deck can compensate for that because we do have so many good generic monsters. So playing the Nightmares makes sure that you are not lackluster when it comes to going second, so we do play these. So 1 copy of Cerberus. We play, of course, 1 copy of Nightmare Phoenix to go for some back removal. You do have monster removal with the traps, but back removal, it's something that the deck really needs. So this is why we do also play Link Uribo, because you are forced to go for a lot of Nightmare plays going second sometimes when you're trying to clear a board, so drawing cards on top of it makes it much better. And of course, we're playing 1 copy of Nightmare Unicorn. This card is mainly here to go for Masquerena, but again, if you're Link climbing during your own turn to try to destroy your opponent's board, it's still very easy to get access to. 1 copy of Access Code Talker. This is the cherry on top of when you're doing the Nightmare plays. If your opponent has anything else on the field after you do all that, you can Link climb into this card, destroy the rest of their board, and go for game. 1 copy of Appaloosa. With Masquerena, sometimes you can use this card to make during your opponent's turn, because maybe you have the revival quick play that you don't have access to yet, or you can get it access to during your opponent's turn, and you don't have enough monsters to go for an Appaloosa during your own turn, but because of Masquerena, once you bring back a monster, or maybe you summon another monster that can special summon itself from the hand when you summon anything, then you can go for this card during your opponent's turn. And we're also playing 1 copy of Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. In case you're playing against a deck something like Adignisters or anything that makes any unaffected monster, the deck would struggle a lot without a card like this, because it's not like you can do a lot of damage. Access Code Talker is the highest card, of course, you can summon, but that's basically for any deck, so if they summon a 6000 attack Arrival, you're not going to be able to get over it. So since the extra deck does have enough space for a card like this, we might as well play it to make sure we don't lose to something like that. So yep, that's the deck, guys. Rescue Aces are a really fun deck, and I'm really hoping that Konami gives us more support, because I think that the Amazing Defenders decks, all 3 of them have potential. It's very rare that you see this with a deck building set. Most of the times, like, one of them is good and the other 2 are like unplayable, to the point of being unplayable, but this time all 3 decks are already good enough, and with a good support they could become really actually good tier 2 decks, and maybe with a new ban list sometime in the future, maybe they could become tier 1, but that we cannot really know yet. But again, these decks, all 3 of them are really good, and I'm hoping that Konami gives them justice and gives them better cards, and that makes them even better. So yep, that's the deck, guys. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and we'll see you next time.